Right, and what I'm asking was it white people, so I'm going to ask again in case my mic's not coming through clearly. White Democrats,
most black people were Democrats, and they voted for these white people
not
too.
voters. I said who's in charge of the system.
Well, who put them in charge?
Was Lyndon Johnson white or black?
Who put them in charge?
Maybe that'll help.
Fine, Lyndon Johnson was white.
Thank you.
Okay. All of a sudden, the governor is accused of somehow defending slavery. He's not doing anything of the sort.
What did you think
Well,
about
sir,
that?
you were actually one that defended slavery. In your comments, you said that, like it or not, slavery was legal in response to reparations. So it's you that was defending slavery, correct?
Defending it and saying that it's illegal are two very different things.
That was your response into if reparations should happen. So your response to that was, like it or not, slavery was legal, and one would think that that was a defense on those who were asking.
Well, you would think it was a defense, but it is not a defense.
A little while ago, I did a video on why the left loves black women. The premise of that video is that women generally engender more sympathy than men, and black women in particular engender even more sympathy because they are members of historically oppressed groups. To put it bluntly, it's the same reason that a terrorist might use a woman or a child as a human shield. I mean, no matter how bad the enemy might want to shoot at them, they would be reluctant to do so if a woman or a child were at risk. Likewise, the left often puts its most controversial and sometimes even absurd ideas in the mouths of black women. Leftist ideas tend to rely upon emotional manipulation, anger, fear, resentment. Women are more likely to buy into these ideas and less likely to be attacked when they do. So they have become effectively the tip of the spear for leftist ideas. Now, if you need proof of this, let's look at Black Lives Matter. Founded by so-called queer black women, their message was obviously false. But we didn't seem to figure that out until they had shaken down the country for millions of dollars and turned our society upside down. How about the defund the police movement? An idea really so absurd, it's hard to believe that the left had the gall to even speak it out loud. Democrat women in particular, and Cori Bush especially, were adamant about it. And this leads me to Tezlyn Figaro of The Breakfast Club. To say that she's the perfect example of what I'm talking about is an understatement. She effectively has become the mascot for the acrid, irrational black female activists, supplanting Jamel Hill and Joy Reid, by the way. In just a short span of time, she's become the GOAT of absurd, irrational takes designed to persuade absolutely no one and simply to express the sheer magnitude of her angry black womanness, an unyielding faith in the universal reach of white supremacy. But who is she really? I didn't know who she was before this, and I was like, why is her juvenile takes coming out of my computer screen? So I did a little research, and I found an article that stated, according to her and, according to the Bernie Sanders campaign, she was fired. But they said it was because she disparaged immigrants, and she said it was because, wait for it, racism.
Bernie Sanders staffer filing a lawsuit this past week accusing the pro-Bernie organization called Our Revolution of racial discrimination after she was fired. She claimed she was personally attacked for raising concerns about issues affecting African Americans and the group's exclusion of African American issues from its agenda. So that is why you filed the lawsuit, to set the record straight so that people understand that you saw problems inside the Bernie Sanders campaign. But Tezlyn, when you were let go, here's one of the headlines, BuzzFeed News. An Our Revolution staffer fired for anti-immigrant remarks is suing pro-Bernie group for racial discrimination. This is the BuzzFeed story that ran this past week. That sounds like you were fired for anti-immigrant remarks.
You have to excuse my skepticism, but if her interviews with Vivek Ramaswamy and Larry Elder on The Breakfast Club are any indication, it's hard to see how anyone could tolerate her biting, condescending, and rude tone for any meaningful amount of time, so she probably was fired for that. From what I've seen, if you are not committed to her dogmatic belief that giving black people stuff should be the top moral and political priority of every human being ever, then she will attack you like a pit bull. And speaking of which, let's have a look at those attacks. When Vivek Ramaswamy was on The Breakfast Club, she was in rare form. Vivek is known, by the way, for his ability to have civil conversations with even his most hostile opponents. Tezlyn happened to be the exception, however. Look at what happens after she tries to belittle Vivek's success building a pharmaceuticals company worth billions of dollars, saying that he was, quote, sitting around.
So you've been here your entire life. So the question
That's
is,
right.
Did you take any leadership role in middle school, high school, class president?
I did.
I know you played tennis. What is it? Explain it to us.
Student council. But, you know, I think that this is yes, I've held leadership roles over my life, but those don't qualify me to do what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it kind of does.
Okay,
Well, it kind of does. Well, I'm giving the test. I'm the test administrator.
All right, there you go.
So it kind of does, because when you go from saying I want to go to the highest office,
and I'll tell you, I've led companies as well. Is the other leader?
Right,
the main leadership
right,
role I've played is and I want to talk about one early part of your premise that I also want to say, bring it to the country point. The other point, you use the word sitting around. You know, I'm not somebody who's saying I want the next generation, my kids' generation, to have more civic duties when they graduate from high school and college than I did when I did. That being said, I wasn't sitting around. I've developed medicines, 5 of which are FDA-approved products today, one of which is a life-saving therapy in kids, 20 of whom die by the age of 3 if they're not treated, 70% of whom now live lives of a normal duration. Another one for prostate cancer. So I don't apologize for making contributions. But
right. Well, I don't want you to filibuster that
No worries.
because
Just
that's
not
not the
sitting-
question that I asked. And I don't consider, as a veteran, I'm talking about service. I'm not talking about what you
Civic
did for
service,
profit. I'm not talking about what you paid people to do with your
So I
company.
have
I'm
not
not talking
served-
about
I have
that
not served the country
because that
in the way
means
you
nothing
have.
to me.
The country
Because that
in the way
means
you
nothing
have.
to me.
The country
Because that
in the way
means
you have.
nothing to me.
Apparently, Vivek spending years mastering like math, science, and law, sales, and administrative leadership pales in comparison to what she says would have been like him serving as junior high class president or community organizing or something like that. In one fell swoop, she demonstrates the sheer worthlessness of the activist class, who contribute nothing to society besides pretending to be more righteous than the people who create jobs and keep us out of poverty, develop medicines, and so forth. And I can understand, see, because when you've never built anything, you're much more likely to think there's nothing to it. It's easy, on the surface. It was literally like she scoffed at someone who had completed an Ironman triathlon because they had never run high school track. And when you consider the fact that 65% of businesses fail within the first 10 years, and very few ever get big enough to actually be publicly traded, you'll know that Vivek has done something that probably less than 1% of the people are capable of doing, but she wasn't impressed. Not to mention the fact that she didn't even drill Cornel West like she did Vivek, a person who, by her own definition, has never served in any sort of public office or gotten elected and has never had a single original political idea. But it was cool. She didn't attack him. But he's a member of the same activist class that she embodies, so I can understand why she gave him a pass. But also, there's the biting condescension, the unnecessary antagonism. This, after all, is why she's there. Although she said nothing that could come close to being reasonable or coherent, she could rest on the fact that she scored rhetorical points by being rude and aggressive, counting on the fact that he would not and could not respond in kind without looking bad, no matter what he said, because that's the point. You can't attack a black woman. As bad as this was, believe it or not, it got even worse with Larry Elder. Tezlyn was so desperate to score rhetorical points against Larry Elder that she actually made an absurd point and performed a massive self-own.
Charge of?
Let's
What
take-
healthcare system are black people in charge of? What government system are black people in
I'm
charge of?
about ready to tell you.
What prison system are black people in
I'm about ready to
charge?
tell you.
I'm not talking about mayors. I already know that talking point, sir. I go on Fox News all the time as well. So let's not go there with that. I said, what system have we created?
Goodness.
Have we implemented that we have been in charge of? Name one.
Is this why you don't like talking to black women, Larry Elder?
Wow. Baltimore. Freddie Gray a few years ago.
No. That's mayors. I'm not talking. I said system.
I'm
Remember,
going to
you like
tell
the
you
word
about
system.
this system if you allow me to finish my point.
I'm not talking about somebody elected and doing a job, sir. I asked, what system did we create? What financial
Okay, let's
system
talk
did we
about the
create?
system of one of the
Let him-
largest.
let him say his
Thank
point,
you.
sir.
One of the system.
Say his
Thank
point,
you.
sir.
One of the systems of one of the largest cities in America, Baltimore. Freddie Gray died in police custody a few years ago. The mayor was black. The head of the police department was black. Number 2.
It's not in charge of the system. But go ahead.
Number 2 person in charge of the police department was black.
Still not in charge of the
all of
system.
city council, Democrats, majority black.
Still not in charge of the system.
Wow.
That's a position.
6 officers charged, 3 of them were black. A judge before whom 2 of the officers tried their case, found him not guilty, was black.
Still not in charge of the system.
The city intendant of public schools was black. The county superintendent of public schools is black. The attorney general at the time, Loretta Lynch, is black, as was the president of the United States, was black. And yet,
Still not in charge of the system.
who's in charge
I
of
asked
the
you a
system,
simple
Ted?
question, sir.
Well, Wanda Sykes said when Barack Obama got elected, how are you going to complain about the man when you are the man? Now, from the president to the attorney general to the state attorney to the mayor to the head of the police department to the commissions of the schools in the city and in the county to the majority of city council in that city, all of them are black. And you're still saying that we don't run anything?
So who's in charge of the
No,
system,
no,
Ted?
no. I said who created the system. I didn't say we didn't run anything. I challenged a lot of those black leaders, by the way.
Of course, she was very on brand with a rude, condescending tone, typical of the angry black woman shtick. But her commitment to the idea of systemic racism, whether it was there or not, would ultimately do her in. She claims that black people have never been in charge of any system. But when she realizes how silly that was, given the fact that blacks have held leadership roles at every strata of government, especially in a city like Baltimore, she quickly pivots and, in a dishonest way, claims she said that blacks never created the system, like that matters.
I said who created the system. I didn't say we didn't run anything.
This, of course, is very different from what she originally claimed, but it's a moot point either way. She was so desperate to score a rhetorical win that she didn't even realize that the very premise of her claim effectively means that black people have been puppets and stooges of white people the whole time. Every black leader, including herself apparently, an activist ever to do anything in this country, by her logic, has been a completely worthless and incompetent person. Everyone from Barack Obama to Martin Luther King Jr. to Cornel West, all of them feckless leaders. Is that what she really meant to imply? I doubt it, which is why it's one of the greatest self-owns in the history of political discourse. And also, maybe somebody should tell her that we don't live in a dictatorship or a monarchy. Black people have approximately 40 million votes, those who are of age, of course, without which no one could expect to have any political power. Not Barack Obama, not Joe Biden, not even Donald J. Trump could win without some black support. So the system that she talked about, someone should maybe tell her that we are actually a part of that system and have voted for many of the same policies that she complains about. Even Charlemagne couldn't help but see that this was going nowhere and has to save her by offering comic relief and changing the subject.
This why you don't like talking to black women?
Even having to quiet her down, saying, hey, let him finish. Which leads me to my final point. Can the Breakfast Club really afford to keep Tezlyn on during these conversations? I mean, it's one thing to have a hardcore commitment to leftist ideas, which she obviously does, but it's a total different ballgame when you start claiming that like fish can fly because of white supremacy. You know, embarrassing yourself with silly takes on a national stage every time a right-leaning candidate comes to talk about their platform undermines the credibility of their entire show. You know, at this point, it seems clear that they either need to get rid of her or stop having these conversations with these political leaders altogether that they disagree with. Maybe they should just stick to the lefties. You know, even the most committed supporters to their ideas have to be cringing at how terrible her logic is, how rude and terrible she's been to their guests. But I imagine if they fire her, they'll be in trouble because she'll say, the white supremacists wanted her gone. What are your thoughts, friends? Do you think I'm right about that? Or do you think she's going to be around for a while? I mean, obviously they got rid of her in the Bernie Sanders campaign, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Let me know, friends. Leave a note in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. Until next time, friends. God bless you.